According to Greater Vancouver Realtors, which used to be known as the Board of the Greater Vancouver Realtor Area or something silly like that, I guess all my jokes about how ridiculous their name was actually worked because they recently did a rebrand. Congratulations on that. But according to them, home sales in Vancouver were down 19.1% compared to last year, which shows a shift to the buyers. But that being said, the amount of activity has slowed and those buyers are still showing some hesitancy. And in this video, we're going to break down the Vancouver real estate market, and I'm going to include some stats from my secret weapon, which is Edge Analytics. You can get this for a fee from edgeanalytics.ca, just so I can show you what's really going on in the Vancouver market, instead of seeing it through the lens of what the Greater Vancouver Realtors are showing you. But before we get into it, my name is Nolan Matthias, and if you want the latest Canadian real estate and financial news, this is the place for you. So do me a favor, hit the subscribe button and hit the like button so more people like you can see this video. And by the way, if you can't handle the truth about what's happening in the Vancouver market, this isn't the place for you, so just click off and go somewhere else. Okay, so now that we got rid of all the people that can't handle the truth about what's happening in the real estate market, let's move on and talk about the data and talk about what's happening here. So I'm going to start by jumping into the headlines here. This is the monthly MLS housing market report from the Greater Vancouver Realtors. Now I'm going to have trouble saying that, even though it's way easier to say than their old name. But let's take a look at what's going on here. And this is their monthly MLS housing market report. As you can see, just by looking at the beginning of the report, you really can't tell anything about what is happening from this report. It tells you detached stats, townhouse stats, apartment stats. Doesn't give you any indication of where they're coming from or where they've been. But what I can tell you is that the market is getting worse. And we can see this by the one really clear piece of data that they show here, which is the number of sales, which in June of 2023 was 2,988, and in June of 2024 was 2,418, which is down 19.1%. Now, they're correct in suggesting that hesitation remains to buy in the biggest markets in Canada. This includes Vancouver and Toronto, and there's good reason for that. It's because it is insanely expensive to buy in those areas. And I do like some of the rebranding that Greater Vancouver Realtors have done here, because even though this is very similar to their old stats package, in fact, this part is exactly the same, there are some things that they've added. At least I think they've added this. I didn't see this before anywhere. They've added this GVR economics page, which has some interesting graphs. They aren't the best graphs, but there's some interesting graphs, and they tell a little bit of the story, but not all of the story. Now, one thing I want to point out here is on their stats. When you take a look at the initial numbers here, they talk about benchmark price. When you move over to their graphs, they're talking about average sale price. It's important to note that those two things are different. Benchmark in any sort of good, whether it's housing or commodities or anything else, is a standard definition for what that particular item looks like. So in this case, for a detached home, it might be comparing 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom condos, or sorry, that's not detached home. For a condo, it might be comparing 2-bedroom, 2 baths to 2 bedrooms, 2 baths over time. Now, average sale price looks at the entirety of the market, and this can get heavily skewed based on what is going on in different areas of the market. So if the low end or the high end is acting differently, it can skew these numbers quite significantly. And if you have one really big purchase or sale, it can really skew the numbers. So when you look at the average sale price, you have to look at it with a grain of salt because this is the entire market. It doesn't really give an indication of what's happening on individual types of properties. But this graph is showing that the average sale price continues to go up and in fact seems to be higher than it's been at any other time. But the more important graphs here are the units sold graphs. So the gray line is the actual number of sales. The green line is the trend. And as you can see, this has been trending down quite significantly, and it's back to 2018, 2019 levels, which in the Vancouver area were actually quite low because of how expensive it was getting relative to the rest of the country, including relative to Toronto. You don't see this same sort of pattern in the Toronto market. But what this tells us is that the number of sales are back to where they were in 2018, 2019, when things were really slowing down. And then if we look at the sales to active listing ratios, you can see that this is coming down as well. And when the sales to active listings ratio comes down, this means there should be some softening in prices. Now, obviously, that isn't the case because the average price seems to be going up. But I can pretty much guarantee you that when we look at certain benchmark pricing, the pricing will in fact be going down on certain types of properties. It just has no choice but to when the numbers of sales relative to the number of listings is as low as it is. And if they haven't come down, well, they should start coming down, at least to some degree. Doesn't mean you're going to get a killer deal on a property in Vancouver anytime soon, because there's still a lot of immigration, there's still a lot of people moving there. But what it does mean is that the prices, should start to come down. And then when we take a look at the number of active listings, this is where it gets really interesting, because the number of active listings, which is this part way down on the right here, is coming up to levels not seen since, 2019. And when the listings come up the way that they're coming up, that means there's more inventory. And if buyers really are hesitant to jump into the market, well, that essentially means that they are probably not going to see as many sales, and you're going to see prices come down. As we jump back in here, and I want to take a look at the Metro Deep Dive, this is the Edge Analytics report that I like to look at because it gives you so much more valuable data than what the real estate boards give you. And by the way, this is largely done with real estate data from the boards. It's just interpreted by an analyst who puts it into easier to understand terms. And when you look at the monthly home sales, yes, you can see that they're low. Now, these are seasonally adjusted. So what this does is it adjusts the number of sales for the season. There's certain times of the season where you see higher sales and certain times where you see lower. This adjusts it to show where it's at relative to other seasons. And if you take a look at the monthly change in home sales, what you'll notice is that this has been jumping around in Vancouver for quite some time. There's been periods that have been up, there's periods that have been down, but this most recent period is definitely down. And when you look at the year over year change in sales in Vancouver, you can see the total is down about 19%. The number of condo sales is down even more than that, around 22 to 23%. And the number of single family homes that are being sold, so detached homes, is actually down less than those for condos. And there's good reason for that, which I'll get to in a second. But here's where the data gets really interesting, because if you start looking at single family home sales, and the kind of hard to see line down here, the black line, is where things are this year, what you can see is that this number of single family home sales is nearing the lower end of what they've been over the last decade. All those lines, those colorful lines above it, show years where things were better. They include years like 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, and 2018 and 2019 are about where the numbers start to come down. So this year is most comparable to those 2 years. And if you look at the condo market, you see the same sort of thing happening in the condo market. And as we've seen a little bit earlier here, the new listings numbers are up, but when they're seasonally adjusted, they aren't actually up as much as the more general numbers, the nominal numbers would have you believe. And if you look at the number of new listings, we're seeing the same sort of trend that we saw in Toronto. We're seeing condo listings are up significantly as new condos are coming online and people who bought pre-sales are trying to get out of them. And you can see the number of single family homes that are being listed is significantly lower, because if you've got a single family home in Vancouver, that's like holding a piece of gold. It only ever seems to go up in value. And if you give it up, it becomes really, really hard to replace it. And if you look at the Vancouver sales to new listing ratio, what you can see is that the sales to new listing ratio is down quite significantly. It's below 50%, which is an indicator that yes, we're entering a buyer's market. But when you look at the HPI year over year, this tells a different story. So this is the benchmark price. This tells a different story than what the average sale price tells. And as you can see, the HPI benchmark is starting to come down, not go up like the average sale price would have you believe. This is a more accurate indicator of what's actually happening. And as this sales to new listing ratio continues to decline or stays low, you can pretty much guarantee that the prices are going to come down as well. And you can see this. Look over here, sales to new listings come down, price comes down. Sales to new listings goes up, price goes up, comes down, goes down, goes up, comes up, goes down, goes down. You see the trends. So when this number comes down, you can expect that 2 or 3 months later, prices are actually going to start to follow. And here's where it gets really interesting, because when you look at the active MLS listings, so this is the number of listings that are available for sale. This isn't new listings, which only shows the number of new listings this month. This shows the actual number of active listings, the ones that didn't sell as well as the new ones. And what you can see is that aside from 2014 and 2019, the active listings this last month are higher than they've been at any other time in the last decade, except for, of course, those 2 years. And when you look at the year-over-year numbers, this is where it gets really scary, because the year-over-year numbers show that there's 57% more active listings for sale this year than there was in the same month last year. And when you look at single-family homes, there's 46%. And when you look at the total number of active listings, well, you can see that that is up 46% over last year. So there was significantly more inventory available this year than there was last year at this time, and significantly more than the new listings numbers would have you believe. And by the way, as we go into next month, we've already seen some preliminary data on this. This data only gets worse. Now, we've talked about the MLS Housing Price Index. You can see here that, again, it tells a different story than what the average price does. But what even tells more of a story is the monthly change in Vancouver MLS HPI. And as you can see, this has jumped up and down and all over the place over the last several months. And my guess is, given the sales to new listings ratio, this is going to continue to start to decline, especially if we see more and more new listings with less buyers coming into the market. Because like the Vancouver Real Estate Board said, or whatever they call themselves these days, the number of people that are getting into the market, the number of people that are hesitant to get in the market is seemingly insurmountable from a market perspective. And this is where it gets really scary, because these numbers show the total number of dwellings under construction. And as you can see, when they break it out by single family, rentals, and condos, the number of new rentals that are being built is massive. The number of new condos being built is massive. The number of single family homes that are being built is at a record low. But this is what really scares me, is the number of condos that are continuing to be built. And what that means is that there's going to be more and more of those listings coming online. And that could mean a significant price correction in the Vancouver market. Now, depending on which side of the coin you're on, if you're a buyer, this is a good thing. If you're a seller, this is a bad thing. And if you're just hoping that your property is going to maintain the value that it has, or that you're going to have a significant amount of income from a pre-sale that you've been holding on to for a couple of years, well, the realities could end up being significantly different than what you would hope for. So depending on what side of the coin you're on here, the Vancouver numbers are looking more and more scary, and there could be a significant, let's call it, correction in the Vancouver market. Now, I don't think the prices are going to come down 40 or 50%, but do I think that a 10 to 20% reduction over the next 8 to 12 months is possible? Well, yes, absolutely I do. And I don't think that a reduction in interest rates of another percent even would have any sort of major effect on those headwinds that are coming for the Vancouver market. Oh, and if you want to see what's going on in one of the other massive markets in the Canadian real estate space, make sure you check out this video right here, where I talk about the insane number of condos that are coming online in Toronto and what that's doing to the market there. Because there could be some foreshadowing with the Toronto market of what is about to happen in the Vancouver market.